Hello everyone, welcome to today's science lesson where we'll be looking at the circulatory system. The circulatory system. This system deals with the heart, the blood, and the blood vessels. We'll be looking at the role of the heart, blood, and the blood vessels. Before we go any further, I would like us to carry out this short activity where we can actually feel the pulse rate by placing the tips of our index and middle finger on our wrist. So you can do it from that end. When you feel your pulse, and then you count the number of beats for 15 seconds. You only count for 15 seconds and then you multiply that number by 4 because there are 4 15 seconds in a minute. Multiply the number you're going to find by 4 to find out how many times your heart beats in 1 minute. Where does this pulse come from? Where does this pulse come from? We'll find out as we look at the session. So like I said earlier on, today we'll be having only 2 objectives. And the first objective is you are to name and describe the main parts of the human circulatory system. And lastly, describe the role of the heart, blood, and blood vessels. Name and describe the main parts of the human circulatory system. Describe the role of the heart, blood, and blood vessels. The main function of this human circulatory system is to transport blood, to transport oxygen, to transport nutrients to the body. And there are 3 main parts of the human circulatory system. These are the heart, blood vessels, and blood itself. The heart, blood vessels, and blood itself. Let's quickly dive into the heart. What is the heart? What is the function of the heart? What is comprised in the heart? So the heart works as a pump to move blood around the body. It has 4 chambers, 2 atria, upper chambers, and 2 ventricles, lower chambers. These are the chambers of the heart. So we have the right atrium and the right ventricle, painted in blue. And then we have left atrium and left ventricle, painted in red on the other side. Please note that the human heart, when presented on paper, when it is facing you, your right is its left, and its left becomes your right. As you can see here, you are looking at this video. This is your left side, but we have labeled it as the right side. Please always remember that. The next part, we are going to look at what each of these parts do. What each of these parts do. So let's examine how blood flows through the heart. So I'll start with the first part, labeled 1 here, which is the right atrium. So the right atrium takes in blood carrying carbon dioxide. This is deoxygenated blood. And then that blood is squeezed into the right ventricle and taken to the lungs. Now, there in the lungs, we have oxygen replacing that carbon dioxide. So in the lungs, that is where oxygen replaces the carbon dioxide. So as you can see the movement here from the upper body to the right atrium, squeezed down into the right ventricle, and then it goes to the left lung where oxygen replaces carbon dioxide. The next part, we are going to look at how blood moves now from the lungs to the atrium. So oxygen carrying blood, since oxygen has replaced the carbon dioxide, this blood is oxygenated blood from the lungs. So oxygen carrying blood from the lungs enters the right atrium. Blood again is pumped into the left ventricle and starts its journey back to the body. So this process continues. It's an ongoing process. It doesn't end here. That is why we say the function of the heart is to pump blood to all parts of the body. Please, the heart is not used for loving. Don't let anyone deceive you. Say, I love you with all my heart. The function of the heart we've looked at today is to pump blood to all parts of the body. Now, let's see if you were following. This is the heart. And I would like us to quickly examine the content that we've covered so far. Can you explain how blood flows through the heart with a partner? Even without the diagram of the heart, are you able to? Like, try explaining the process to your peer without referring to your notes. No cheating, no opening books, no flippy. Try to remember what we have looked at. Remember where I started? Using the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. So we see there that if you were diligently following the explanation, you will have something like this. From the body to the right atrium, from the right ventricle to the lungs, from the lungs to the left atrium, from the left atrium to the left ventricle, and then back to the body. And we say this process is ongoing. Remember, the function of the heart is to pump blood. Oh, blood. What is blood? Okay, so that takes us to the next part where we'll be looking at blood. So blood is a special liquid primarily contained within the blood vessels. It has 4 components, namely red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, and plasma. Red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, and plasma. This blood that we are talking about and its components have different functions. Each of those components has its own function. Let's look at the functions. Our blood has 4 main components, namely red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, and plasma. So let's start with the red blood cells. Red blood cells carry oxygen, nutrients, and wastes. Oxygen, nutrients, and wastes. White blood cells fight diseases and protect the body from infection. White blood cells fight diseases and protect the body from infection. Then we have platelets that gather at the site of injury and help the clotting process. Platelets gather at the site of injury and help the clotting process. Lastly, on the components of blood, we have plasma. Plasma is the liquid part of blood, or straw red colored, the straw colored liquid where the other components float in. It is the liquid part of blood. When blood samples are taken, when someone has a blood test, a small amount of blood is taken, kept in a tube for testing. Now, to closely examine blood undergoes component separation, meaning each component will have to settle at its own space. So one common method involves spinning it at very high speeds in the centrifuge. Now, as you can see in the diagram here, showing the test tube, we have plasma on top, white blood cells and platelets occupying that percentage, and then we have red blood cells at the bottom. Take note, blood is divided into its components with the heaviest parts at the bottom. Now, this blood that we've talked about, it has to pass through certain parts of the circulatory system, and these are the tubes or channels called blood vessels. These are tubes, like I said, or channels that carry blood throughout the body. There are three types of blood vessels, namely veins, arteries, and capillaries. Veins, arteries, and capillaries. Each one differs in size, each one differs in structure. What do I mean? We have the three types of blood vessels here: arteries, capillaries, and veins. So to describe the arteries, it has the thickest wall of the three. The artery has the thickest wall of the three, allowing it to withstand. There's a reason why it is like that. It's able to withstand the high pressure created by the heart. Capillary, it has the thinnest wall to allow substances such as oxygen, substances such as sugars to pass through its walls into and out of the blood. Lastly, the veins. A vein has less muscular and stretchy characteristics than an artery. We can say it is less muscular and stretchy than an artery. So blood moves through it with low pressure. It also has a special valve that helps blood go only one way, meaning the function of that valve is to stop the backflow of blood, to allow blood to only move in one direction. Let us look at the functions of each of these blood vessels. Artery carries blood away from the heart. Capillary assists in the exchange of substances between blood and tissues. Lastly, the vein carries blood back towards the heart. Remember, artery, the easiest way to remember, don't get confused with arteries and veins when it comes to functions. A for artery stands for away from the heart, away from the heart. Veins towards the heart. Is that clear? Good. And then, having looked at blood, having looked at blood vessels, having looked at the heart, you know, when you're talking about the components of blood, there's a part where we talked about white blood cells helps to fight off disease infections. Sometimes you will discover that as we still look at blood, there is what we call diseases that can be inherited. Like sickle cell disease, SCD, is an inherited blood disorder. People with this SCD have red blood cells that become hard and sticky, forming a C-shaped blood cell instead of a healthy disc-shaped one. Now, considering what you've learned, you and I have been looking at the heart, we've been looking at blood, its components, we've been looking at blood vessels. How does this shape affect blood flow in the circulatory system? How does it affect it? Okay, so it is the irregular shape of the sickle-shaped blood cell that makes it easy to clog. It makes it easy to clog, it makes it easy to block the blood flow. This can cause pain and other serious infections. Now, class, today's session, we have looked at the circulatory system, and we have said it delivers oxygen, it delivers nutrients to the body while also removing wastes. We said that the human circulatory system has got three main components. It has got three main components, namely the heart, blood, and blood vessels. We describe the heart as a muscular organ that has 4 chambers, and its function is to pump blood around the body. Blood, we said blood has 4 components: plasma, red blood cell, white blood cell, and platelets. It carries oxygen, nutrients, and waste. We later looked at blood vessels, where we said there are 3 types of blood vessels, namely arteries, veins, and capillaries. They serve as channels for the blood. Thank you so much for your time.